All right, we're live. Welcome everyone. I tried to get my other mic working, but it's not going to work. But so we will probably not pick up the audience as well. But in any case, and there we go. New booklet. So I only made 10 copies. So
the other one that I remember reading at camp about
the seventh month movement, the Midnight Cry, and the Carryout Calendar.
Yes, that one.
Well, this is the actual document that Samuel Snow wrote.
Oh, okay.
With an introductory commentary from myself as to the significance of this document and why it's so important to us and why it will solve so many problems that we are wrestling, or people are wrestling with, that just settles. I mean, the Carryout Calendar tells you which day is the seventh day Sabbath. It tells you when the Sabbath begins. It tells you when the feasts begin. All of that's settled. It tells us when Jesus died. On the Friday in AD 31, the Friday crucifixion. All that's in the Midnight Cry.
So that helps with like lunar Sabbaths and all that too? Absolutely.
It helps with all of those things. If they are willing to believe what the angel said to Ellen White, that the light at the beginning of the path was the Midnight Cry, which would light the path all the way to the city. So I'm not here to contend with those who feel differently. I'm just here to say this is what I believe and what I'm convicted on.
Have you put it on the web?
Yes, it's on the web.
Good.
You're dropping your ball there, Kerry. You're not keeping up the speed here.
This is my morning.
We forgive you, Kerry, freely. We love you. So.
If I start snoring, please.
We'll get Gav to sit next to him.
Oh, that would be just lovely.
So, just a few more things I'd like to share. For those of you that have been online in the Father of Love group, you would have seen that we've put up pictures of, we've had a shipment. Gary and Holquist has organised to deliver 1,000 copies of Agape to the West Coast, to just the other side of Sacramento in California, where a good friend of ours, good friends, Victor and Susan Moskowitz, they've taken the 1,000 copies and they are keen to, because they're a strong colporteuring family, they're keen to go door to door and test it out, and so they're going to give me some feedback on how they're taking those things door to door. Susan actually used to work with Jan Markison handing out National Sunday Law and other things like that, so she's a very seasoned book person, and we're very, very thankful for her and her family. Her eldest son Misha has currently been on a 10-week colporteuring summer camp, and it's called Souls West. It's part of the Adventist Church, and they've been colporteuring all the good books from the Spirit of Prophecy and other things, and it'd be good to have something like that here in Australia, and we will soon.
One of the ladies I was looking after the other day, she works for the bishop down at Lismore.
Ah.
Yeah, I gave her the Agape.
Marvellous.
Yeah, he came up and blessed the babies and stuff like that, and so I said, yeah, take this home and read it. She goes, oh, I will, I might even show the bishop. I said, yeah, you do.
Wonderful. and I'm just getting so many story feedbacks. Again, if you would have seen on Father of Love, Laurel encounters someone in the shopping centre in Coles, and they start having a conversation, and she ends up giving him a copy of Identity Wars and Agape. Now this is.
Leave a trolley in the aisle.
She left a trolley in the aisle and bolted for the car. And brought 2 copies back. Now this is something that Laurel doesn't normally do.
She needs to have them in a bag.
And he said we were meant to meet. We were meant to meet, and he was so excited to get these books. He says, can I give you a hug? So I guess she thought that was okay. So
Yeah, Bron's saying it's got a real bluey tinge, is that what
And
you're saying?
there's interruptions in transmission.
Sorry, I've.
Steve?
Not functioning.
Hang on, the prop. Here we go.
We're utterly deflated, Doris.
Oh,
You're
live.
Thank you for trying.
You're live. We tried and it was
You're
just
live,
wasn't.
darling.
we went live. We went live. For those joining us online, we've just trying to arrange the curtains so that we don't offend anyone online by a curtain out of place. Paul has addressed my wardrobe malfunction, so we've got that catered for. And for those of you joining us online, don't worry about the hilarity that's taking place here. That's just our Waterford family. Idiosyncrasies and all. I think we need to pray. So let's do that. Our Father in heaven, we thank you that we can kneel before you. We pray that the technology will work for our friends online so they can join in with us. And as we continue to think upon the themes that we were considering last Sabbath and take this a little bit further and look at the scripture and the spirit of prophecy on the subject of the judgment. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Craig says better now.
Okay, good. So I guess it would have been struggling. I was, for the technocrats, I was pumping it out at 5 megabits, and NBN's not going to handle that, not here. So I've put it to the appropriate level. So as I've been thinking about this subject of the judgment, and we just remind ourselves of the words of Jesus in John 5:22. And all of the exception rules that man must bring to bear on this passage to disprove what Jesus is saying when it says, "For the Father judges no man, but has committed all judgment under the Son." And we read in John 8:15, as some brought to my attention. I love collective Bible studies. We look together as a group. John 8:15. Ye judge after the flesh, I judge how many people? No man. And of course, the standard response is, well, not yet anyway. But it's coming. It's coming.
He changed his character.
And I have not checked the good thing about the Greek, and maybe we could check this as to whether it's present continuous or present complete. You have to check that's something we can look at a bit later in the tense, voice, and mood of the Greek. As to you're right there, Andrew.
Oh, please continue, Bill.
The point of
what does the very next verse say?
What does the very next verse say? And yet if I
do judge,
my judgment is
true.
And for I am not alone, but I am the Father that has sent me. And if I do judge, my judgment is true.
Yeah, that seems to be suggesting that, if I do, because I may, and if I do, it's true.
So we have to reconcile those two things. I judge no man, but if I do. Yeah.
Well, he did that when he wrote in the dirt with Mary Magdalene. His judgment was true. He showed everybody exactly who they were, and they all said,
Interesting, isn't it?
So that was his judgment. He wrote these things on the ground. And that was more than what they could do.
And Kerry is saying about Jesus writing on the sand the sins of those that were accusing this woman. But notice how he didn't speak a word. Didn't say a thing. He didn't point the finger. He didn't accuse. He just wrote in the sand in a way that everybody knew what was being said without naming anyone. Everyone knew exactly what was going on. So,
Could you change the word from judgment to censure?
well, the Bible uses judgment. Obviously, censure. We can read in the book of Job when contending for the body of Moses. What does it say? Christ did not bring against a railing accusation or censure. We see that. What verse is that one in? Verse 9, Jude 1:9. Yet Michael, the archangel, being Christ, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, does not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. So lots of things that Jesus could say about Satan, isn't there? There's plenty that he could put on the table to say, well, let's talk about this and this and this. But he doesn't bring against him a railing accusation.
The New Living, Craig just simply said, the New Living in John 8:15 and 16, you judge me by human standards, but I do not judge anyone. And if I did, my judgment would be correct in every respect, because I'm not alone. The Father who sent me is with me.
That's an interesting text, isn't it? If I did judge, it would be true.
But I don't.
But I don't. Which is really interesting, isn't it? I don't judge. I don't pass verdict. And this is what is so interesting about the things that we've learnt in regard to Daniel chapter 7. The reconciliation of the fact that Jesus said that his Father doesn't judge and that God is the great judge. And we talk in Daniel chapter 7. And I just want to come back to this. I want you to think about something, and Ruben and I were doing some study on this, and I want to relate it to you, because the manifestation of the three powers of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece and Rome, we see a progression of authoritarian, you have the kingdoms. We have Babylon, which begins, and then we move to the Medes and the Persians, and the Medes and the Persians are known for, what are they known for? At least in the story of Daniel. Once the king had made the decree,
Unchangeable.
you cannot change the law. The law is infallible. It's unchangeable. It cannot be changed under any circumstances, and particularly on the subject of death, apparently.
But interesting that their law could not be changed but added to. But even God says about his law it's not to be changed.
That's an interesting point, isn't it?
Added or taken away from.
We better add something here. So we see that in the story of Esther, where the king added to the law to allow the Jews to defend themselves against the decree, but he couldn't stop the decree to slaughter the Jews. And then of course we move to the Greeks. But I just want to draw out a bit of a parallel here in terms of the whole concept of one group of people, one tribe, dominating, coming in, subjugating, dominating and imposing their law system upon another group of people, and trying them according to their law and forcing them to follow their customs. This is an interesting process, isn't it?
We're quite familiar with it. I think we're quite familiar with it.
We are, aren't we? This whole process of imposing upon other individuals. And what I would like to suggest to you is in Daniel chapter 7, we see the development of the human soul. This is a story of humanity. And this is a story of what, given the right circumstances, that we all would pass through, given the right opportunities. You're familiar with the statement that power corrupts. And what's the next part of that statement? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? And it's true. It's true. And why is that? Because when men get into positions of power, what do?
Enjoy it.
They start dictating.
They start securing their base. They develop cronies and oligarchs or people to protect their power base and begin to crush and destroy, judge, crush and destroy those who would threaten their power base. And this is very much happening at the present time. We have a number of leaders around the world who are gathering momentum, seeking to stamp their authority upon the world. But it is, and I was sharing this with you on Sabbath, that in verse 7, Daniel 7 verse 7, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, for those of you who've been on this journey with us for a little while, you'll remember a presentation that we did a long time ago called The Recipe for Blasphemy. Do you remember that presentation? And we look in Titus chapter 2. That is going back a long way, so don't worry if you haven't heard of that one before. But it is somewhere online. Titus chapter 2. And it says about women, verse 4, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands and to love their children. And I've made this statement many times that, at least as I'm observing, that women in a collective capacity have essentially lost their ability to teach the younger women. That is being done by Hollywood and media and the internet. Their peers rather than the older women. So we do have women's ministries, but in the church, but Fiona's not going to comment. So verse 5, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not what? And what is written upon the beast? The words what? Blasphemy. So here is the formula for how you get blasphemy. You change the world order between and as we've talked about, in the source-channel relationship of headship and submission and protecting the channel of blessing, that when you change the order so that there's no longer a blessing structure, you will develop worthless individuals who will seek to dominate and control. We see this in Genesis chapter 6 about the mighty men, which in the Hebrew means tyrannical individuals, because they lack the blessing and they will seek to dominate and control the world. And so this is what we're seeing in Daniel chapter 7. These individuals born to homes where there was not a blessing structure, where fathers were insecure. And I relate to you the story of Philip of Macedon, who was the father of Alexander the Great. And when his son, at 10 or 12 years of age, was able to break in a horse that his father couldn't break in, he told his son to leave home. So great was so brittle was his character that because his son was able to break in a horse and he couldn't do it, he had told him to go and get his own kingdom at 12 years of age, and he did. So this is how these kingdoms are created, through the lack of blessing. And another, we come back to this text in John 8:15. I want you to look carefully at this. How judgment is related. Says, is that the verse, or was I thinking of another verse? Verse 14, Jesus answered and said unto them, though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true. For I know whence I came and whither I go, but you cannot tell whence I come and whither I go. No, that's not the text I was looking for. No, I'll have to come back to that one. No, verse 50, sorry. John 8:50. Thank you, Lord. This is the verse. And I seek not my own glory. There is one that seeketh what?
His own glory.
His own glory, and
judges.
there you have. That's where judgment comes from. Seeking your own glory.
Your
Okay.
own standard.
Yeah. Your own standard.
Self-making.
I do not seek mine own glory. There is one that seeketh and judgeth. This is what we've been talking about this counterfeit system of justice, where Satan is focusing on justice and he is seeking. So that's an interesting take on that.
So, then how do we, John 5:30, I can of myself do nothing, as I hear I judge, and my judgment is righteous. Because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me.
Because as he hears, he judges, which means it's not his independent judgment, it's the judgment of his Father.
Alright, who doesn't judge?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, are you serious?
Sorry?
Are you seriously wanting to have a discussion about, God's judgment?
Isn't that what we do?
As in, you understand God's judgment is to judge the fatherless, judge the widows. That's. I wanted to know. I mean, are you familiar with?
Don't worry about it, buddy. It's all good.
Because that's my understanding. Like, if you want to look at that, we can.
You need to be addressing your attention here. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
So just excuse me for a minute. You just continue.
All right. So, did I say something wrong? Do we understand the subject of judgment? I mean, God's judgment, to judge the fatherless, to judge the widows. God's judgment is mercy, gracious, long-suffering, abounding in goodness and in truth. And that's the judgment that God gives. But judgment in terms of critical analysis of individuals or seeking to condemn, and that's not the judgment that God's involved in. So I just thought...
That's one of the keys, I think, is to set out the definitions of what we're meaning.
So that's... And I guess I thought that was fairly well understood, but I was happy to look at that if Andrew wanted to. So if we come back to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. And the thing that I find interesting is that when Ruben and I were doing a study on the book of Job, there's an interesting correlation between the three men who are considering Job's situation. And there is an interesting correlation between them and Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. What's interesting about the young man, Elihu, at the end, in terms of his name, there is a connection to the word rum, or one that lifts himself up. And the reason I make that assessment is that in each of these cases, in each of the cases of these men, they are all sitting in judgment and passing judgment upon Job and condemning him for something. And Job, of course, means hated. And so one of the things that I think is going on here is that this is what's being played out in the story of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And when you finally come to the story of the little horn, it says in verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And what are the great things that the little horn is speaking?
Blasphemy.
Blasphemy. Yeah. And he's sitting in the temple of God,
Yeah, how great he is.
saying that he is the vicar of the Son of God, and he has the right to condemn and judge and condemn people
And he's
to death.
infallible. And he's infallible.
And he is infallible.
In
As we
verse 11 it says pompous words.
pompous words. Yes, the great words, or the pompous words which the horn spake. And this is the point that I'm... Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick read of great things in Strong's. Domineering in character.
This is what it says in the Strongs.
Yeah, domineering in character.
Domineering in character. So, these are all the things that are coming through in the text. That the little horn is judging, he's condemning, he's sitting in the temple of God. And as we see through the Dark Ages, what was going on? You'd have tribunals. People were, their record was assessed, they were condemned to death, and then they were put to death. And this is what the work of the little horn is doing, particularly in the height of the Dark Age period. And in the midst of all that, while all that is going on, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool, his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. And what does it say in verse 10? Someone like to read that?
And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened.
And which is interesting, isn't it? And then, of course, we have verse 11. I beheld then because of the voice of the pompous words, or great words of the horn, beheld even till the beast was slain. Now, when is this beast slain? When is this?
Not until after the...
Would be the second judgment, end of time.
We see that in Revelation. What happens to the... We can look at that in the story of the whore that rides the beast. And what does the beast do to the woman?
Well, she controls the beast.
Yeah, but where is it? Let's have a look. What does the beast do to the woman? Let's have a look. And I'm trying to remember, is it in chapter 19 or
18 verse
18?
A, so page 10, she is to the woman.
Verse 9, and the kings of the earth which have committed fornication live deliciously with her shall bewail and lament for her. No, that's not it. I should know where that is. But...
You're talking about the beast deceiving?
Anyone online can help us? You're probably too far behind.
In Revelation 19:20 it says the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him.
Yeah, they were cast
with
alive.
which he deceived.
Yeah.
But there's another
which he
verse.
deceived them that received the mark of the beast. So the beast actually deceives them that receive the mark.
Yeah, but
There's another verse.
yeah.
Why can't I find it? Anyway, there is a verse that says...
It's for one, it's for a short
Revelation
period.
17, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's 17, I think, but... It's
8.
Verse 8, isn't it?
Yeah, Revelation 17, verse 8.
But it talks about
or
a time
17, 7.
16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
Yeah.
So it was 17. So that's the woman. That is also connected to the little horn. So
It's interesting, the next verse. Do Adrian?
for God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That's an interesting statement, isn't it?
And to agree.
And to give their kingdom under the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? So how is the beast in Daniel chapter 7, which is symbolic of Rome that becomes the papacy, and then it says in Romans chapter 7 that this beast is taken and what?
Romans 7, did you say?
Daniel chapter 7. It says that I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and in this case the beast and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. I guess the question is this talking about the papacy or the kings of the earth? I don't want to jump to conclusions there too quickly, but my understanding there, it's talking about particularly the papacy. It's talking about there and the power behind it.
What does Ellen White say?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to refresh myself on that passage. But at least if I'm looking at this carefully, that what we're saying here is that it's not God who steps in and destroys the papacy. The papacy is destroyed through its own deceptions and craft, and it finally comes back on itself. As it has sown, so it reaps. And this is the judgment that God brings upon the little horn power.
Verse 12 is also open. It says, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time.
Yeah.
Well, this one's different.
This one's different to the other ones. So
were the daughters all riding their own beasts?
Well, in this particular case, it's talking about Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and how that flows through into the last days. The power of these kings and how that looks like. I'm not sure what that looks like. So, but the thing that I want to share here is that we have this description of this power becoming more and more dreadful, more and more tyrannical on the earth, and then it shifts to this picture of God sitting on the throne, and the books are open and the judgment is set, and then we see the destruction of the beast, this judging. So as it is judged through this revelation, this picture of God who is sitting on his throne, and this fiery stream that issues forth, that comes forth from God. Now,
is that the character of God coming forth and destroying the beast in us?
that's a very good point, Kerry.
Sorry.
No, that's... What is the fiery stream?
Well, it's the character of God.
It's the character of God. So God's character, at this particular time, God's character is fully revealed. And we want to look at this in Isaiah 30:27. Where it says, someone like to read that?
Behold, the name of the Lord.
27. Yep.
Yeah, behold, the name of the Lord cometh from far, burning with his anger, and the burden thereof is heavy. His lips are full of indignation, and his tongue as a devouring fire.
So the name of the Lord is as a fire. In 28, and his breath is an overflowing stream, shall reach the midst of the neck to sift the nations with the sieve of vanity, and there shall be a bridle in the jaw of the people, causing them to err. So, is that what we're seeing in Daniel chapter 7 when God sits on the throne and then this fiery stream goes forth, this revelation, this light that lightens the earth with the glory of God that starts to come forth, that should have come in 1888, and it could have come even earlier than this, but in 1888...
Didn't it start to come?
Yeah, it started to come. This revelation of God's character started to come. And when we see God's character, and this is the point that I've been thinking about today, is when you see God's beautiful character, it immediately throws a spotlight on our judging character, our judging nature. And this is where the investigative judgment really begins in earnest. And I was thinking about this today because last night, and I regularly get emails and messages from people suggesting that what I'm saying is a little bit dangerous, psychotic, and things like that. And this person writing saying, you're taking things out of context. And I just began to write responses, and as I was writing, because of what I know now about God's character, I could feel something in myself. I could feel and the only way I could express it is, it was like going back to when I was a child, and when you first go to school and you have to go through they're the rituals that you go through where you have to learn to defend yourself. If you're going to survive the mob environment of a schoolyard situation, you have to learn how to survive. You have to ally yourself with powerful people, or you have to become powerful, and you must learn how to mock and deride the weak. These are all the things that I learned as a child. I don't know about you, but that's how I learned how to survive when I was in school. And sometimes if there was a bully that you thought you could match, you would take them out, or you would get someone else to take them out, or you would you learnt politics. All of these things I learned while I was in Adventist school, and so through all that process of learning to defend yourself, on top of all the stuff of sports, rugby, and all of these types of things, this training in my mind is all about defending yourself. And when someone begins to suggest to you that you are not thinking correctly, that you are a little bit out of control in the things you're saying, the natural instinct is to defend yourself. And when you are writing down the passages of Scripture, it just became much more apparent to my notice that I was more invested in this than I thought in terms of the responses that I was giving. And in the past, you're aware that no, I need to stay calm. I need to just relax and not. But it just became so much clearer in terms of this judgment and this need to respond and this need to write out. And the other thing is that you can write out words, and I guess I've done it this way many times. When you get an email or a communication and you write something out and then you screw it up and throw it away, or you delete it and you do it again because you know that that's not appropriate, but your natural response is aggressive, and then you tame it down and you sanitize it in order to hide your feelings or deal with your feelings. Or sometimes we're aware, no, I shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't do these types of things. But that's the typical process that I've gone through, and I know many other people have gone through that particular process when someone or some people are suggesting things to you that that you're off key. And this is what leads me to this section of the presentation in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus talks about those who are in danger of the judgment. I just want to re-look at this. And then there's some stuff from Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing, which is... some of the thoughts in this book are just beyond amazing.
Pastor Adrian, you were looking at that verses in Isaiah 30, and how you're saying about the character of God revealing. Verse 26 says, "Moreover, the light of the moon shall be the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold, as the light of 7 days in the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. Is that not what you were saying about as you get closer, or was starting to happen in 1888?
That's a good pickup, Fiona. The light gets brighter, and then the breath of the Lord, the character of the Lord, is like an overflowing stream. And as I've thought about this spirit of self-defense, and I can go back to younger years and my involvement in sports and the types of attitudes and behaviours that it has manifested. In looking at the subject of judgment, and I'm still struggling to find words to express it, but I realise that I'm not ready to go into the public arena with this message until there's a radical change in my heart in terms of the need to defend your position. Now, our forefathers in the Millerite movement in Philadelphia, they did defend their position, and with logic and reason and argument, they did defend their position. But this time, it's going to be the presentation of agape, which is a complete selflessness and a complete love for those who are opposing you. And it really came clear to my mind, like, you're not ready for this. And I've watched if you look at some of the discussions that are taking place, I don't know if you look, I'm sure some of you are watching some of the things, but there's some interesting development taking place. There's a couple of individuals that have been visiting Australia and New Zealand recently. I don't know if any of you have heard of Stefan Molyneux. He's a philosopher from Canada. He's a libertarian, and he's come out here, and there's another young woman who is quite a provocateur, but they are agitating ideas in terms of freedom of speech and the right to the freedom of speech. They are on the conservative side of politics in their views, but it's been interesting how they've been treated here in Australia, and how the media here is almost completely to the left in terms of transgender, feminism, homosexuality, the right to be called whatever you want, and masking out the he and she, no longer male and female. We're blotting that out. It seems that Australia is on the death wagon down that path, and these people are coming saying we have the right to call men men and women women. We have the right, and this is causing a lot of agitation in the culture. But as I listened to some of these people dialoguing and talking, and the spirit of debate, and it was intelligent debate, but it is conflict and it is attacking, and this is the atmosphere that is in the world. That if you're going to put your head up and you want to participate in the debate of how the world should operate, or you have a message to give to the world, that's the kind of atmosphere you're going to have to mix in. And we see in the book of John how much Jesus had to contend with those who opposed him and the attacking nature of what they were doing. And it was just this realization that I had, like, you're not really ready for this situation, because you're still very defensive. That's the thought that came through to me. So, in light of that, I read this statement, and it's encouraging. This is from Bible Echo, December 1, 1892. The mighty helper is nigh to help the most erring, the most sinful and despairing. Look up by faith at the light of the glory of God. The light of the glory of God will shine upon you. Do not be discouraged because you see that your character is defective. The closer you come to Jesus, we know this, the more faulty you will appear in your own eyes. For your vision will be clearer, and your imperfections will be seen in distinct contrast with his perfect character. And I can certainly affirm that that's certainly what I'm experiencing. Be not discouraged. This is an evidence that Satan's delusions are losing their power, that the vivifying influence of the Spirit of God is arousing you, and that your indifference and ignorance are passing away.
Mm. Hallelujah.
That's encouraging, isn't it? And so, as I was thinking about this afternoon, as I'm contemplating that God is not judging me, how this is completely exposing my own thought processes and judging other people in terms of defending yourself and this whole process, and then I thought about the effect that this has on Jesus, and I want to read you some. I'm going to read some stuff in Matthew chapter 5 and then some thoughts from Ellen White that just really impacted me this morning. So if we go to Matthew chapter 5. Verse 21. I suppose I better read because the mic's here. You've heard that it was said of old, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. Now typically when we've read these verses, what are we thinking? If you kill someone, God's going to judge you. He's going to get you in the end. So you better not do that. Verse 22, but I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause, that's an interesting subclause there, shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. That's interesting, isn't it? Hellfire.
Gehenna.
So does God release this hellfire?
Isn't Gehenna the rubbish?
The rubbish tip where everything burns up, yeah. Danger of, does it say in danger of Gehenna? Is that what it says?
Oh yeah, the subtext says Gehenna.
Gehenna, hellfire. And I thought of a text in James chapter 3 about hellfire. James chapter 3 verse 5 and 6. Where it says, even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things. Does that relate to the pompous words of the little horn? Behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. Is that hellfire? That when you are condemning and judging, that this is the hellfire, that as the judgment, with what judgment you judge,
You will be judged.
you'll be judged. And what does it go on to say? Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hast aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way first, be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. Agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. It's interesting that the word, it mentions the adversary is mentioned twice. Agree with thine adversary quickly, and then it says, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge. And that word adversary can also refer to Satan. So what do you think is, what's some of the possibilities that Jesus is trying to tell us here?
We deliver ourselves.
That through this judging process you get locked into bitterness, anger, and you get locked in this prison, and you can't escape, and you can't get out. And
I guess the point you're making is if you start to debate or engage at that level, you get drawn into it and you can't get out.
you can't,
That's what happened to Eve.
you can't get out. You get imprisoned. So Whereas most people read this text as God is the one who is going to get you in the end. And these are the things that I was reading when I was looking at this and saying, what is the hellfire? That anger that burns, and the words that we speak, and the condemning things that we say of others, it puts us in a prison that we cannot escape.
I was just looking up those words that we started over, and just going back to raka, and also fool. And fool is stupid or dull, blockhead.
Yeah.
And I think what was the raka is worthless.
Worthless. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Worthless.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's interesting that look at Gehenna, the dump.
Yeah, the dump.
And
That's where you throw the worthless things
That's
out.
where you chuck the worthless things out. So you're condemning that person as worthless, which actually demonstrating the spirit of worthlessness that you feel in yourself, and thus condemning yourself to the dump.
And this is the whole point, and I'll come to you in a sec, Kerry. This is the whole point about the message of God's love, that you are my beloved child in whom I'm well pleased. How does that statement get turned into, well, you're worthless to me now, so I'm going to put you on the dump? That doesn't work, does it? So, you're going to say something?
It's showing us great flaws in our own characters, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's showing us that we're not seeing that other person as a child of God.
Yeah.
When we're condemning that person as we are, we're saying God's word is wrong. I'm telling you what you are,
And
not agreeing with what God said about them in Christ.
And even in debate and all
It's
that
pretty
sort of
serious.
stuff, are we still seeing them as a child of God?
This is the question.
You know, Jesus spoke to the Pharisees, but he cried at the same time. He's going, what are you doing?
Problems just sent me a text saying the man in the iron cage in Pilgrim's
Yes.
Progress.
Man in the iron cage. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing about, and I had a discussion about this today, like, you know, God's justice demands the death of the transgressor. It is the belief that at some point an individual must be considered worthless to be thrown on the dump and burnt and destroyed. That God must consider them worthless to do this to them. And so when you're debating with someone that is worthless, why be nice?
Why be nice?
Just get to the point. And this is the question. So many of the discussions that I have with people are not discussions; they are verdicts which have been reached, and the only discussion that is being had is the sentencing of yourself, and there's no actual dialogue and discussion that's taking place. And that's mostly the discussions I have with my antagonists. They're not actually discussions.
Proverbs 10:19, which was one that was, I don't think it was pointed out to me, but it was pointed out to me by the Lord many years ago by somebody else. 10:19, in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, or it's sin not lacking. But he that refraineth his lips is wise. So to me, a multitude of words, there's a lot of sin in a multitude of words. And I use a multitude of words. But he that refraineth his lips is wise. And so it comes back to the having to defend yourself. You're having to use extra words.
Yes.
To defend yourself. So there's much sin in there because you come closer to what it might be, the judgment or whatever like that. But
Using a lot of words to defend yourself. And this is what we find in debate and discussion. The people that win debates are those who can think faster and speak faster, and their brains are engaged to be able to fire out information faster. They typically win debates. You know, and if other people pause, you draw breath and have a pause, you're dead. You're done, because you're going to get taken down. So don't take breath. Just keep speaking. The words of Jesus here are quite challenging. It's in Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing. And she says this in regard to Matthew 5:22. Through Moses the Lord had said, Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself. Leviticus 19:17 and 18. It's interesting she makes this point. The truths which Christ presented were the same that had been taught by the prophets, but they had become obscured through the hardness of heart and the love of sin. So this is not new information, this is the same. The Saviour's words revealed to his hearers the fact that while they were condemning others as transgressors, they themselves were equally guilty, for they were cherishing malice and hatred. Across the sea from the place where they were assembled was the country of Bashan, a lonely region whose wild gorges and wooded hills had long been a favourite lurking ground for criminals of all descriptions. Reports of robbery and murder committed there were fresh in the minds of the people, and many were zealous in denouncing these evildoers. At the same time, they were themselves passionate and contentious. They cherished the most bitter hatred of their Roman oppressors and felt themselves at liberty to hate and despise all others, and even their own countrymen who did not in all things conform to their ideas. In all this they were violating the law, which declares, Thou shalt not kill. Now, that's a big statement. To have a spirit of irritation, annoyance towards someone who has a different view, a different understanding to yourself, is leading you down the steps towards the breaking of the commandment that says that thou shalt not kill.
In Psalm 22, talked about the bulls of Bashan had encircled me. They gave at me with their mouths like a raging and roaring lion.
Psalms 22, the bulls of Bashan gaping with their mouths.
Verse 12.
Yeah, and that's what Jesus experienced at the cross. The spirit of hatred and revenge originated with Satan, and it led him to put the Son of God to death. And this is the issue that we're dealing with. And as I looked at this in light of my understanding of the judgment, I confess that I felt that fiery stream. And my whole life of self-defense, which I've probably even manifested tonight, much to my shame. But I got to the point this afternoon that, I thought, am I going to be able to overcome this? Like, my whole life of judging people. And, there's different ways of judging people. Of course, there's the open and obvious ways where you speak in a derogatory manner. You call someone a fool, an idiot, a stupid person. But there's much more refined ways of judging other people. There's reverse ways of judging other people. The reverse way of judging other people is when somebody says something about you, you feel hurt and you feel self-pity. That's a form of judgment on somebody else, that what they have said is unkind, unfair and untrue, and you manifesting your hurtfulness is a form of judgment on them. Isn't it? How much of that type of judgment do we engage in? And as I think about these things, and thinking that this attitude, these feelings of self-pity, these in my mind, when somebody is not operating in your mind, I don't know about you, but in my mind, the mind is constantly surveying and checking and analysing and comparing, and you have to try and shut it down. Stop. No, don't condemn. Don't be judging. Don't judge. That's constantly going on in the mind. Like, okay, this is the situation. We need to, and this is how we handle it and how we deal with it. Because as a child, that's how I was raised. You're constantly assessing threats and trying to gather allies. That's a form of judgment. Who can I ally myself with? Who are my threats? And that's all judgment on other people. And after 12 years of Adventist education, my brain is permanently damaged by this. So my brain cannot be repaired. I have to be born again. I need a completely new heart. There's no way that my brain is going to be able to get me through to the kingdom.
You need the man who was born blind, and he had not only new eyes but a new mind that could take in that stimuli that he'd never been able to take in before. So not only was his eyes fixed, but his whole imagery and brain. And
Yeah.
everything.
And that's where you have to come into that belief of recreation. And
We have a perfect example of that, Saul to Paul,
yes,
and it was instant.
there was a tremendous change that took place, but Paul still had problems.
Yeah.
Uh,
But his perspective changed.
Yes, and I would hope to say that I've had a tremendous change, but as I'm looking at the life of Christ, I'm like, in this context of judgment, I'm taking a deep breath at the moment.
I was just listening to your discussion about in the Adventist education. There's many people who haven't had Adventist education.
Oh, how much better is it out there?
Who operate in this.
Just as damaged.
All of us are just as damaged. You know,
So it's not Adventist education that damages you, it's education.
Well,
any kind of
Just
thing
idiots
that's
growing
normal.
up in this world.
We live in a
That's
world
right.
of norms and accepted behaviour and
Hey.
exclusiveness. It's everywhere. It's not just Adventist education.
No, that's right.
And I wasn't saying it was just Adventist education.
You're just acknowledging.
I'm just
your
acknowledging
damages.
this was my experience, where if any place where it should be different, it should be there, but it wasn't. It was exactly the same as everywhere
That's
else.
not a judgmental statement.
Well, I hope it's not a judgmental statement. And this is the thing about it. If I do say it was different and it's better, then I am judging, saying, well, we had a better, so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So, yeah, we're all facing this in our education system, and we've all drunk of that Greek philosophical system of the classics and etc.
But I guess it's different. There's levels of it, isn't there? And as you're pointing out, the reverse side of it can be very different to the other side. Like the debating side, we can see quite clearly. But
Debating is obvious,
yeah.
but more subtle forms of self-pity and depression from, and addictive behaviours coming from feeling judged and condemned by others. It's all reverse judgment.
But that comes in the family more so than in the school.
Yeah.
So we're caught.
Yeah.
We need help.
Because, and obviously, as a child, when my father is, wanting to discipline me, one of my objectives is to make as much noise as possible to make him look as bad as possible. That's all part of the. I think most of us have worked that out, haven't we? That's what kids do.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. They
You
do
know-
that
And we
too.
continue that as
Yeah,
adults.
yeah.
Because we make other people look bad.
Yeah, we scream blue murder, and it's all on them, and it dealt with you.
Yeah.
So, that's how I survived. That's.
The story of Zacchaeus in Luke 19 made me think about, because Jesus said he was going to his place, and he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all murmured, saying, he was gone to be guest with a man that is a sinner. He could have defended himself, but he turned around and said, and Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. So here's the repentance and the outstreaming of the Lord's character. And if I've taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. And then Jesus said, this day is salvation come to this house. So he didn't turn around to defend himself, but he fourfold gave back to anybody that he had taken from. So he realised what he was. Obviously, the closer he came to Christ, he was revealed who he was, and he was willing to give even more, as in a repentance. So rather than the multitude of words against, it was a multitude of grace flowing out.
Just accepting, not trying to fight, not trying to fight back and defend. And
verse 10 says, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost." He didn't say to seek, get out and kill.
And that gives me tremendous comfort. And I think that's, as I thought about all these things today, and I know that everyone is made of the same dough, but for whatever reason, with my personality and the fact that I'm a very passionate person, sometimes I get very discouraged. Like, why can't you just shut up and be quiet? Why do you have to be so passionate about everything that you do and where you go? It really gets you down sometimes. But we all have different personalities for different purposes, and I've often said to the Lord, like, maybe there would have been someone better to do this job,
I've stuffed it up again.
So, yeah, it's it's the old Peter thing, I suppose. But
I think every one of us is just like you, in that. Why did we do this again? Why? What is it ever going to change?
The foot and mouth disease.
The foot and mouth disease. And that's the thing, as I thought about this afternoon, about this spirit of self-defense that leads to the condemnation of others, that this is the spirit that put Jesus to death, that I really began to see my nature. This is where I'm really beginning to see my nature putting Jesus to death. Like, it's, okay, yes, we're all guilty of the death of the Son of God. Yeah, okay.
Next.
What's next? But I know at some point it's like, grace will be given to us that we may behold him whom we have pierced, and we'll weep for him as one mourns for his only son. And I think I began to experience a little bit of that today. And I got to the point where I felt my own sense of condemnation against myself. Like, you just think of all the grief that you've caused Jesus over the last 50 years, with this self-defending spirit. And the sense of condemnation, and this is the thing, you need to understand where it's coming from. It was coming purely from me. It wasn't coming from my Father, because my Father doesn't judge. And so this person in Daniel chapter 7 that I imagine to be the great judge, this is me. This is me that I've projected onto him. He's sitting there and the books are open, and I've projected onto him that he is doing the judging, because that's what I do to other people. And this has been such a revelation. And as I thought about all these things, the amount of thoughts in my mind saying, hey, do you think you're going to make it? It's like, you're so screwed up, and you've been through so much trauma that you really start to think about it. And I'm sitting there as a judge saying, it's too late. But and the good news is, Paul, I says, but I know my Father. You were coming in to save me there, brother. I know.
Jesus didn't throw the towel.
That's the only thing that gave me courage. My Father's not like this. And I know he'll forgive me, and the only thing standing in the way of that is my pride. Like, you are so much worse than you thought you were, and you have to live with that, and believe that your Father forgives you. And it's much harder when you really think about the fact that you've caused Jesus suffering. You know what I mean? It's easy. Oh, God forgives you. Yeah, but let's deal with the heart issue of the suffering that it has caused Christ. Let's get through the agony aspect that he's had to deal with you for 50 years. Let's deal with that issue first, and then we'll talk about the forgiveness thing. Let's not rush to the forgiveness. Oh, God forgives you. Yeah, I know. But let's deal with the suffering that it has been caused him. Then you can be forgiven when you've dealt with the reality of what you've done to him. So,
Jacob wrestling, Genesis 32:26. Ellen White says, determined effort and faith essential. Jacob was in fear and distress while he sought in his own strength to obtain the victory. He mistook the divine visitor for an enemy and contended with him while he had any strength left. But when he cast himself upon the mercy of God, he found that instead of being in the hands of an enemy, he was encircled in the arms of infinite love. He saw God face to face and his sins were pardoned.
And isn't that shocking? That his beloved he thought was an enemy. And are we going to go through the time of Jacob's trouble?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So
we're going to do the same.
Satan's having a ball, but you'll rattle.
Huh?
Satan's having a ball that you're rattled because you're trying so hard, and he's just rattling your cage,
Well,
making you feel unsure.
So did you come up with the thread?
Philippians 1:6. From Craig.
yes, I am absolutely convinced that he will complete the work that he started in me. And I'm hanging on to that. But I'm taking the risk to be vulnerable with you to say this is really rattling my cage.
Yeah.
And it's part of the journey of...
It's important to see that the one we love, we're hurting.
Yeah, we're hurting him. And that hurts me. It's just...
Because until we see that, we're not going to want to stop.
Yeah, I want to stop this, but I realise that I can't. I can't stop. And I just have to throw myself on him and just say, Lord, help me. Lord, save me. Because I can't stop. My whole brain is completely messed up. It's totally screwed up. And I'm just, as soon as I'm attacked, I'm just ready to go. It's like... So... the heart is deceitfully wicked. So I thought, it's like we could bypass all of those things. But like I say, and I want to make it really clear for everyone here and anyone who's watching, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many books I've written, how many people I've baptized, how many countries I travel to. None of that adds one iota to my salvation. There's nothing good in me at all. But I trust in the righteousness of Jesus, that he's going to make this a reality. He's going to change my heart, and he is changing my heart. And I guess this is, as I read that statement there, where it says, be not discouraged, this is an evidence that Satan's delusions are losing their power.
And your eyesight, is something that your eyesight's clear?
It says, the more faulty you appear in your own eyes, for your vision will be clearer, and your imperfections will be seen in distinct contrast to his perfect character. Be not discouraged. That's what gave me hope as I thought about a particular passage.
Daniel 10. Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart
You are
to
greatly
understand,
beloved.
and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. And then verse 19, and said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto you, be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me.
And you know the thing that gives you the victory is that when you see how beautiful his character is and how much he suffered because of you and your defensiveness, and then you feel that condemnation coming down on you, when you know that that's coming from you and not from your Father, that's what saves you. Like if you thought that was your Father condemning you, you're not going to make it. But through the brass mirror and seeing this whole process that my Father judges no one, exactly as Jesus said, that's given me the opportunity, and I can see this, it's given my Saviour the opportunity, all right, Adrian, we're going to go a little bit deeper now. We're going to take you a bit further, and let's just see if you believe what I've been telling you. And I had that happen while I was away, and I was really frustrated with my stupidity, and Jesus is just gently saying, Adrian, my Father is not condemning you. You are condemning you. You are manifesting in your own mind the little horn power that speaks great words. You are the little horn in here. And your judgment, you are willing to put up against my judgment. I have judged you, my son, worthy of grace. I've given you everything. That's my judgment. But you're putting your judgment up against my judgment, and you have the audacity to think that your judgment has more weight than mine. That is pompous. And the very fact that I was struggling with this afternoon speaks to this pompousness of my own judgment. That I would even consider, if he says, you are forgiven, you are my son, and I've forgiven you of all these things, I should just accept it. So why am I fighting?
You can't.
Because this false justice system is all through me. Every sin must be punished. It's in there. I say, Lord, I need a complete transformation from what I have now. But I'm not discouraged, as it says, because I can turn and say, well, I know that my Father loves me. And that's the thing that keeps you going. Now, I want to read some texts in 1 Corinthians chapter 4. And we better finish up soon. But just notice, Paul, it's like texts that you've read over them. I mean, I had to read the New Testament when I was in Pathfinder, so I've read all the New Testament. So I've memorised many books of the New Testament, but things jump out at you and it's like, oh, I didn't even notice it was here. 1 Corinthians chapter
4 and 5.
4, 3 to 7 particularly. I will find it. Where it says, verse 2, moreover it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Indeed. Verse 3, but with me it is a very small thing that I should be judged of you, or of man's judgment. I love Paul. What does he say next? I judge not my own self, for I know nothing by myself.
Amen.
Is that freedom?
It is.
I know nothing. I don't judge my own self because I know nothing. If any man thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. Yet am I not hereby justified? But he that judgeth me is the Lord. This is the true judgment. And what is his judgment? Mercy. Verse 5, what does it say? Therefore, judge nothing before the time until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of God. Now, if we believe in a God that sits up there and he just offers his sentence and just says, this is the way it is that going to manifest what is in the hearts of those that he's sentencing? Will it reveal what's in them? It won't. He manifests what's inside of their hearts by allowing them to judge. And this is the whole point of the judgment in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, where God has set up a situation where that we are allowed to manifest ourselves and our character is revealed. And we look at Romans chapter 2, just again, we did look at this the other day, but just once again, how is the judgment conducted? Verse 16, in the day when God shall judge the secrets of men, by what?
By Jesus Christ.
By Jesus Christ. And when he says the words Jesus Christ, what's he referring to?
His character.
His character as revealed where?
Manifested here on earth.
Manifested here on earth. He, in the day when God shall judge the secrets of men, by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. And what happens? Well, verse 15, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their consciences, or conscience, also bearing witness, and their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. How many people do we accuse in our minds?
So
that is the works of the law.
It's the work of the law, isn't it? And when you come to know Jesus Christ, what his character is really like, the human heart is revealed. And once again we ask the question, do you believe the words of Jesus when he says, my Father judges no man, you judge after the flesh, I judge no man. And when you believe that, then it gets really interesting. So
that makes sense now of Romans 9, verse about 30 through to chapter 10.
9, Romans 9.
9, we go to verse 30.
What shall we say then?
This is us. What shall we say then? The Gentiles, which follow not after righteousness, have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel, us, which followed after the law of righteousness has not attained to the law of righteousness. Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. For they stumbled that stumbling stone, as is written, Behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and rock of offence. He didn't judge. And whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer for God for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear them record they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. What is the zeal of God? Paul describes it over in Philippians 3 and verse 6, where he's talking about his whole life concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching the right. So this is judgment to the extreme as far as you can take it, persecuting and killing the church.
So Paul was seeking his own glory by judging, condemning and destroying as a Pharisee.
That's right.
And this is what we are now seeing manifesting in the church, condemning, throwing out of the church those who believe in the begotten Son.
Right.
And the reaction of the other side to condemn and point the finger at the church leadership, calling them Babylon, calling them... It's all the same spirit.
All that.
There's no
Verse
difference.
3, for they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. What's the righteousness of God? He does not judge.
He's merciful.
He's merciful.
It's the righteousness of God.
So it comes
That He is merciful.
the righteousness by faith message, the whole thing
And
starting to tie together.
for me personally, this piece of the puzzle, it goes beyond, I guess it goes to the heart. We've talked about God not physically killing, but we have to that's the channel issue, that's the physical issue. But the source issue is judgment that leads to death and destruction. And maybe this is, I'm just thinking aloud now, this is the divine pattern issue, because on this issue of judgment, this is what's really turning. There's no way for me to be saved outside of the righteousness of Jesus Christ. It crushes all hope and possibility of me reforming myself. It destroys it completely. It can only be by faith alone. And praise be to God. Nothing I do is ever going to merit me salvation. And I rejoice in that, even though it's a humbling experience. And so this message, I think, is what's going to bring about a change in us. And I invite you to think upon these things, because it's the issue of judgment, self-pity, and how dare they say that? Can you believe they would say something like this? All of the things that we deal with every day within our families, amongst those that we mix with, in our workplaces. It's the issue of judgment, judgment, judgment. And Jesus is on record. We have no excuse. I judge no man. This is what we have to face in the judgment. How many people did you judge? Thousands. Hundreds of thousands.
Everybody.
Even myself.
And myself included.
Two of our greatest fears as humankind is rejection and abandonment, which comes out of judgment. We are excluded.
Yes.
We are rejected. We're abandoned because of judgment. And that is as our nature for humankind. It's something we run from.
Fear of judgment. And this is the thing, you raised a really good point there, Di, is that as I thought about this, why do you get agitated when people judge you? Well, it's because I judge them. If you weren't judging people, you would not fear their judgment.
It's also, if you regard our Father's judgment, then we don't need to worry about their judgment.
Exactly. If we only cared what our Father thought about us, we wouldn't worry about their condemning behaviour or attitude towards us. But when we keep worrying about it, it means that their judgment has more weight than our Father's judgment. That's blasphemy. And it's instinctive. because of our herd mentality, our group mindset, group think, all those things that we engage in, that we need peer approval. That's the whole schooling system that has been developed in the West. So, the Greek mindset, to train our brains to think in a certain way. So, anyway.
Thank you, Adrian.
We will say goodbye to our friends online, and we will have a prayer season.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Chop one of those. I go too soon. Chop them off.
30 seconds.
That's all right. We've got to wait for them.
Maybe we need to have a little 30-second sing thing or something. Farewell,
But they won't hear that.
But that's all right.
It's all right.
Keeps us in time.
Yeah, should be okay.
Yeah. Okay.